There are small businesses that have income, and then that's not directly reflected in what a family can put in their pocket.
And Darryl, and again, we're talking, and of course the Congressman can't raise taxes because he signed the Grover Norquest no tax pledge, so his hands are tied. I, on the other hand, go into this completely open to both sides, both the revenue side and the cut side, and we need to do both. But I want to say this, 98% of small businesses, and by the way, I'm sure you know this, small businesses are by far the largest job creators in this country, and 98% of small business owners will not be impacted by raising by ending the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest 1 to 2%. And that's been shown. And by the way, President Clinton, in his book, Back to Work, which is a great book if you're looking for common sense ideas, he specifically says he agrees that we should end the Bush tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans.
You could have brought it for Mike to read, but go ahead.
So I was just going to agree with my opponent that most of the jobs are created by small businesses in this country. Somewhere between 2/3 and 75% of all the new jobs over the last 20 to 40 years created by small businesses. The proposal that my opponent just laid out would be a tax increase on 1 million of those small businesses to increase taxes for those organizations that operate as a subchapter S under the Internal Revenue Code, where they pass through income, whether they take it or not. And most of those small businesses, they don't take it. They reinvest it in their businesses. They buy capital equipment, hopefully made in the USA equipment. They purchase real estate. They improve it, and they fill those buildings with employees. That's what we need them to do in this economy. If we want to recover, and this is how you started the question. How do you get people back to work? I talked to the businesses in Bucks County and Montgomery County. I visited well over 100 actually during that period of time. They have asked me, stop threatening to raise taxes. We got to get Washington, fewer regulations, lower taxes, and get government out of the way, and we can recover. But there's a choice of two futures here. You know, my opponent is saying she's going to raise taxes, higher regulations, and all the taxes and regulations of Obamacare and that health care regime on top of it. And my future is a government that spends less, that taxes smarter and less, and lets individuals make their own business investment decisions so that they can recover and get people back to work.
Well, we'll hear from the Congressman on this because he has said often that if he were in a position, he's already taken votes to repeal the health care, the Affordable Health Care Act. Now even the president refers to it as Obamacare, so I guess I can too. But he wants to repeal Obamacare. What do you think about that issue moving forward? And I'm assuming that you want to vote to repeal it.
Well, no, and let me go back for a moment to the Congressman's. Everything that he's been saying is mostly inaccurate. And second of all, what the Congressman wants to do is he voted twice for the Ryan budget, which would put the burden on middle-class families and seniors rather than asking the multimillionaires and billionaires to pay their fair share. He's right. There's two very different visions here. My vision is to support seniors and soon-to-be seniors and make sure that those most vulnerable and middle-class families who are, again, the 99%, not the 1% that we're talking about ending the Bush taxes. And President Clinton, under President Clinton, when the taxes were higher, I will get to that.
We're talking a lot about President Clinton. I don't know how, but
he's a wonderful model. Yeah. And the job growth under him, when the taxes were higher for most of us, the job growth was stronger than under President Bush when he cut the taxes. So we've shown that trickle down doesn't work. Okay, healthcare. So many things that I'd like to talk about healthcare. Look, this is not the bill I would have drawn. This is not the law I would have drawn. This is not a perfect law by far. My single biggest concern about it is that I want to make sure that it's not a burden for individuals or for small businesses. I've been a small business owner. I know how hard it is for people to afford to provide health care. And frankly, that's my biggest concern about it. I want to make sure that we watch very carefully how this plays out. A lot of it hasn't taken effect yet. We need to make sure it's not a burden for anyone. At the same time, I think most of us would acknowledge that it's critical that we don't have our neighbors and families and friends getting their health care in the emergency rooms. That's bad for our health, it's bad for moral reasons, and frankly, it's bad for our pocketbooks.
So you would go in advocating to reform it or fix it or tweak it or whatever,
yeah, it's more
but not
than
repeal
tweaking.
it.
It's fixing. I mean, we need to make sure that we have cost containment in place, and frankly, the Philadelphia Inquirer and their endorsement of me mentioned this as well. We spend, Darryl, this country spends over 17% of our gross domestic product on health care. Our administrative spending on health care costs is unbelievable. If you look at comparable countries in the world, they spend less than 12%, many of them less than 10%. If we were to spend, less than 12% on our health care, 12% of our gross domestic product on health care, do you know how much we would save? $870 billion every year. Every year. I'm not talking about 10 years. Every year we'd say that. Even if you only got halfway there. $435 billion a year. This is what we should be looking at, and that would help all of us.
Obviously, Congressman, you have said on this program and elsewhere that you would and have voted to repeal it and would hope to be part of a majority that could make that happen, I suppose.
Well, that's right. And first, let me say, with respect to, and I was always very careful to call it the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act out of respect for the bill. And
now even the president calls it Obama.
And he calls it Obamacare
right.
now, so I guess it's okay for us to refer it. So we all know what we're talking about. There are some important reforms that are in the bill that I've supported, and I think we need to support. The coverage for pre-existing conditions is important that we preserve. The ability for families to be able to negotiate with their employers or their insurance companies to extend coverage for their children who are graduating from either high school or college in a very difficult economy with few jobs and fewer jobs with health benefits. That's the Obama economy. To be able to have them stay on their parents' health coverage a little longer if they're adults and they're living at home, I think that is a good thing. But most of what is in that bill, I think, is harmful to the economy. It's what the businesses in the district that I visited with almost unanimously told me was a burden on them. And so
you roll it all the way back and then reintroduce some of what you support?
And replace it with true free market reforms that include those consumer protections that I talked about. But when it was passed when Pelosi had control of the House of Representatives without a single Republican vote in the House or the Senate, without any real conversation we're talking in this campaign about reaching across the aisle. When the Democrats had the House and the Senate and the White House, President Obama had a meeting at the Blair House. He said, you can have your say, then we'll have our way. Remember, he said, that's what elections are for. You can go ahead, Mr. Cantor or whoever, say what you're going to say because we have the votes. And they made certain promises when the bill was passed, and those promises were not kept. Number one, they said that this was not a tax. It was the first promise. Number two, they said if you have health insurance policies and coverage that you like, you can keep it. And number three, the third promise was that the cost of your premiums would go down under this bill, would not go up. So number one, this was a tax. We now know that. The Supreme Court found it constitutional on the basis that it was a tax. Not just a tax. There are 21 separate taxes in the bill. Taxes on, and when Ms. Boockvar is in favor of keeping this bill, it's increased taxes on income, on dividends, on capital gains. That's where those tax increases come. Taxes on medical devices. You can go through the bill and list the ways that they're going to tax. Number two, the premiums have gone down. Individual family premiums have gone up. They haven't gone down, as was committed to by the president. The average American family has seen their health care premiums go up by about $2,500.
So there's stuff that each of you like and don't like. You would roll it all the way back, reintroduce what you support.
I think you keep the consumer protections that are in the beginning of the bill, which are good, and you repeal the balance, and you go with free market reforms that businesses like association health plans, like permitting individuals to purchase health insurance across state lines. I have this idea that health insurance, any American should be able to buy any policy they want anywhere they like.
And now it's restricted by state.
And it should be fully deductible.
I just want to get your opponent back on, and I guess your thought is you think that whatever is going to replace it is not going to provide the security that the current bill provides.
You can't. I mean, the thing is and the congressman, likes to say one thing here and do another in Washington. I mean, he says he supports all these other provisions, but the fact is he's voted with his party and with the Tea Party over 30 times to repeal some or all of this bill. Now he says he's for the first 500 pages of the bill, but maybe he doesn't realize that the mandate is in the first 500 pages of the bill.
I'm for the consumer protection provisions in the first 500 pages.
Well, in any event, the problem is, I'd be all for, all the citizens of Bucks and Montgomery County and, everywhere, I'm sure, everybody agrees that we need to make sure that we can cover our kids till they're 26. Everybody agrees we need to get rid of pre-existing condition exclusions. Everybody agrees that we need to help people get preventative cares without, co-pays and deductibles that make it prohibitive. The problem is you can't have all those things without a system in place that encourages healthy people to get coverage as well as sick people. The insurance companies couldn't shoulder the burden if only sick people were getting coverage. So look, again, this is not the bill I would have drawn. There's a lot of it we need to fix. But the whole concept of the mandate, of course, you realize was created by the Heritage Foundation, conservative Republicans. And I've been very interested that Dr. Bill Frist, who was the Republican Senate Majority Leader.
Former Senator, yeah.
Exactly, and he is strongly in favor of fixing
Darryl, can I
Obamacare
address the system in place that Ms. Boockvar wants to support and wants to continue to approve? It includes a $715 billion cut to Medicare. They had to do this. In order to pay for Obamacare, they had to take $715 billion out of Medicare. Everybody understands it. That is going to...
Not everybody agrees with that.
And of course, the Ryan budget took that same $716 billion that the Congressman voted for. That same exact $716 billion.
Speaker Pelosi agreed.
About it, Congressman.
Speaker Pelosi agreed that more than $500 billion came out of Medicare to pay for Obamacare at a time that we need to strengthen and secure one of the most important programs we have for today's seniors, Medicare. We should have strengthened it and secured it. We basically took an underfunded program, made it weaker by reducing it by $715 billion. But number two, and this is critically important as well, Obamacare includes a provision called the Independent Payment Advisory Board that my opponent supports. It's a group of unelected, unaccountable 15 bureaucrats appointed by the White House for the sole purpose of reviewing benefits to determine what will be provided and what will not be provided. And so in the future, no matter who the congressperson is from this district, senior citizens who are having problems with Medicare, they're going to come to their member of Congress saying, I don't like this. I want you to be my advocate in Washington.
And it'll be in the hands of the board.
Under this bill, it'll be in the hands of somebody that's unelected and unaccountable. That needs to be repealed. And Democrats and Republicans agree that the Independent Payment Advisory Board is terrible. Doctors don't like it. It needs to be repealed.
There's so much